I'm Dr. Hackey Reitman. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. Today we have as our guest Colin Eldred-Cohen from the California area. And Colin has just written his first book, but more importantly, he does a lot of stuff at fishandcherries.com. He's going to tell you all about it. Colin, welcome to Exploring Different Brains.
Hi, Hackey. Thanks for having me on Different Brains. Well, he pretty much said it. I'm a writer. I do reviews of comics, books, and movies. And I just came out with my other book, The Fire Truck Who Got Lost. If you want to see more, go to fishandcherries.com, the official Fish and Cherries production page on Facebook, or follow me on Twitter at @KeckTheRonin.
What are you writing?
Mostly critical stuff, like reviews of movies and comics. I have an ongoing movie review series called Real Snippets on my website, fishandcherries.com. But I'm also writing op-ed pieces and, well, some fiction, like The Fire Truck Who Got Lost.
Well, how'd you first decide to become a writer?
I honestly don't know if I ever decided. I think it was just always there. Like I've been writing since preschool. Just, not all of it very good.
And what are your other hyper interests, would you say?
Well, movies, definitely. I think in movies in a way. But also gaming, of many different kinds, Star Wars, and yeah, I think that's it.
How did you figure out you were on the spectrum?
My parents figured it out. I just kind of always knew it's just been something that was constant about me. They always told me I had Asperger's syndrome, and, well, kind of grew up knowing that. So I guess you could say I was diagnosed very early on.
And how did your upbringing differ from, say, somebody who might be considered neurotypical, which, by the way, I don't think really exists, but what were some of the early interventions you recall?
Well, so in school, I had to take my tests in a different room because I needed more time. That was most of the stuff in school. Early on, I had to go to speech therapy. And in college, I needed a note taker because, well, college professors moved a little too fast.
Now, my daughter Rebecca, who's 34, and she got her discrete mathematics degree from Georgia Tech. Now she's about a third of the way through a master's in applied psychology. She's not bashful anymore about going to the Office of Disabilities, asking for some of the accommodations you just mentioned. But I find that a lot of people are reluctant. For instance, some of our interns who pass through here, who might be on the spectrum or have Asperger's or you name it, and they go off to college and they don't want to be stigmatized, so they don't want to ask for the accommodations. What advice would you have for people entering college?
There is nothing to be ashamed of. Like, there is no such thing as normal. If you need someone to help you take notes or some extra time on tests or whatever, that's perfectly fine. You probably excel in whole different areas.
Tell us about your experience at the San Diego School for Creative and Performing Arts.
Oh, that was some of the best years of my young life. I had a lot of good friends around, and I just grew up admiring these fellow students who could act, sing, dance, all play instruments, do visual art, all kinds of amazing stuff. And when I was when I entered high school, I finally was able to, work up the talent to get into some of the main stage productions. In fact, the first thing I ever did was something I petitioned for. It was this during this sort of talent show thing. My friend Norman and I did a rendition of Who's on First.
Do you consider yourself a comedy writer?
Um, I hope so.
And do you consider yourself a comedy performer?
Yes.
What are your favorite comedy movies? I want to see if our senses of humor are similar. Probably not.
All right. Well, if I had to pick, I would say, I would say at least in the early days, Charlie Chaplin. But if I'm going a bit more modern, I gotta say it's a cross between Mel Brooks and Monty Python.
I have a chapter in my Aspertools book about how important it is to harness the hyper interests, some would call obsessions.
Right.
And I tell everybody, no matter what their brain is like, if you're lucky enough to find out what you really love, and you can figure out how to make a living at it, and if what you do also can help or make happy other people, that's the perfect trifecta. You have a good time the rest of your life and you're never working. Have you figured out how to monetize your hyper interests?
Ugh. I'm still working on that. At the moment, I'm using my writing hyper interest to build up the resume. I'm in a on top of my fish and cherries thing. I'm also doing some unpaid gigs for fan base press where I write reviews for comics that haven't come out yet. Yeah, every review is one more notch on the resume, but it's also something I really love to do. Though for the past 3 years, I've been working under a grant for creative writers, so that's been one way I've monetized it. I found someone who's willing to pay me to write creatively.
How did you get involved with Ascend?
Ah, yes. We just call it Ascend up here, but I gotta thank my parents for that, or at least my dad, though I think my mom was too. Basically, they were looking around, they found this group, and they thought, oh, that's interesting. There's a community of people on the spectrum up in the Bay Area, so I tagged along with them, sort of got integrated into the group, and I've been going to a few meetings ever since. And my dad, Donald Cohen, is helping make what he calls the Autism Creatives Collective, sort of a networking group for creatives on the spectrum.
So, for all our creatives on the spectrum who might be watching you or listening to you now, how do they find out more, and who do they get in touch with, and what do they do?
I think at the very least you could get in touch with Donald Cohen, my father, at donald@inthepublicinterest.org. Other than that, I just say Google Autism Creatives Collective and see where that gets you.
That is some crew out at Ascend. I, had the pleasure of speaking out there, recently, and that was some crew out there. Michael Bernick and all the rest of the happy campers there.
Oh yeah.
Good. And your dad does a lot of great work. Tell us more about In the Public Interest, if you might comment on your dad's role there.
Ah, yes, my dad's role at In the Public Interest. That is a thing I know. Um, well, as far as his role, he's the owner, so that's something. And as far as what he does, he flies out to Washington every week or so, and I feel like he does nonprofit work. I know I'm part of the email blast, so I get political emails from him.
Okay,
But
so we can go to their website and figure out what they're doing, what they're up to.
yes, that sounds like a great idea.
Tell us about your book.
Ah, The Fire Truck Who Got
Let's
Lost.
see your
Pictured
book.
here.
The Fire Truck
Right.
Who Got Lost. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, we sold 30, at least 35 copies this weekend alone. It's mind blowing.
That's great. What is it about? Tell us about the book.
Well, it's about a young fire truck named Barnabas, and he lives in Fire Station 12 with four larger fire trucks and a big Dalmatian. Um, and he gets to go fight his first fire. Uh, you know, trucks are there to help him. The trucks are doing stuff. His hose is too little, and he tries to find some water to, help him. And then the fire goes out, and the trucks leave. Barnabas comes back, and he has to find a way to get back home because the trucks accidentally left him.
How do people purchase that book?
You can purchase it on Amazon or The Art of Autism.
What would you say your career goals are?
My career goals are to make Fish and Cherries Productions a legitimate internet studio that's producing video content, audio content, basically like an actual production studio.
Okay, and what is your role in Fish and Cherries now? You're the chief cook and bottle washer and do everything. You shoot, you
Yeah,
edit,
pretty much.
and your skill sets. You have a BA in filmmaking,
Yes.
and where did you get that from?
UC Santa Cruz.
UC Santa Cruz. And how are your editing skills? Would you say?
I mean, I learned it a long time ago, and sometimes I can get hung up on making all the shots flow perfectly together. I would say I'm pretty good, though I am sure there are other people out there who can do what I do super fast.
Now, how much time do you spend writing in a day, would you say, or is that very variable?
It's variable, though. I'd say a minimum of 5 hours.
What about your video shooting skill sets?
I would say film shooting, I would say I'm about a 7.2. My biggest trouble is lighting and sound design, and I'm not even sure if I'm a good director, like able to communicate things to actors very well. But I would love to, if not get better, then find some people who are better to work with.
How did you gravitate toward comedy?
Oh, that's a good question. I, well, part of it is that I really like laughing. But another thing is that's the easiest way to judge if someone likes your movie. That's kind of what I discovered in college. And so, yeah, I just kind of started. Yeah, it's hard to say because I've always had comedy in mind, but I don't know. I just always wanted to give people that same sort of pleasure that I get when I sit down in front of a good comedy.
Now, was your family supportive in this?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, early on, they had to tell me like, no, you can't write full time right out of college or right out of high school, which I mean, harsh but fair. And but as of late, they've been really supportive. And after my grant runs out, they're encouraging me to go part time on a job so that I can focus on my writing.
What advice would you have for a young person How old are you, by the way, may I ask?
I'm 28.
You're 28. So let's say I'm in my early 20s. I'm watching this. What's the biggest advice you have for me? Say I'm 20 some odd years old. I'm on the spectrum. I haven't quite found my niche yet. What's the overall advice you would have for me?
I would say keep trying, find something you really love, go for it, and find a good support network. Good support network of friends or family or mix, because whether you know it or not, they will be helping you, or whether they know it or not, too. I mean, sometimes just you're with friends, and that's when the best of you comes out. That's what I've found.
And what advice would you have for any of the parents watching this?
Any of the parents with non-neurotypical children, I would say, you know, uh, your child is at a stage in his life where he really needs love and support. You know, the world can be very unforgiving for non-neurotypical people. So always listen to what's going on with them. Also, always try and find some way to help, and always ask questions, because that's the best way you'll be able to understand.
What are some of the favorite clips that you've done that people can find either on YouTube or on fishandcherries.com? Or what are some of your favorite bits that have you on camera?
Let me see. That's a tricky one. One of them would have to be my vlog for Paranormal Activity 4, which I go on this really long, I don't want to say rant, but this line of questioning, because, that's at the end, and there's like a whole bunch of like cultists like in the driveway, and I'm just wondering, where did they all park? Like, like, or did they take the bus? Is this whole long thing?
Uber. It's an ad for Uber is what it is.
I guess, jeez.
The
And
zombies like taking Uber, particularly.
I guess
Because they don't
so.
have to carry cash. They don't have pockets, many of them.
Yeah. Another favorite might be quite a few of my Ronin rants. The High School Musical ones, the My Little Pony one, and the April Fool's one I did of the Transformers movie, where I dressed up as bad filmmaker extraordinaire Tommy Wiseau and went on this 4-minute ramble about the inner meanings of the Transformers movie and how it's actually this work of great art.
Would you say that self-advocacy is important, and why and how?
Self-advocacy, like putting yourself out there, advertising yourself.
Standing up for yourself, asking for what you need, asking for accommodations,
Oh, absolutely.
being upfront
Absolutely.
with self-identification. I guess it's all part of it. How would you define, well, it's however you would define self-advocacy.
I think you had a pretty good definition. Standing up for yourself, making sure that your needs are met, and basically saying, yes, I am a person. I deserve the same rights. I think that's omni-important. Because, well, if you don't, who will? You're not always going to have someone there who's going to be able to wave your flag. And I think the more you're able to stand up for yourself, the better you'll be able to help yourself in the long run. I mean, if you're standing up and someone's standing up with you, that's more standing power to hold up, the heavy load.
Well, Colin, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. Say hello to your dad for me, by the way. He was a great teacher out at the Ascend in San Francisco, and it was great to meet him as well. And it's great to see you, and thank you so much for being a guest here at Exploring Different Brains.
Thank you for having me.
For more information, visit us at differentbrains.com.